Would you please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. If you please bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, we'd like to thank you for this beautiful day and the weather that we've had for the last couple days. We would also like to pray for all the victims that have been inflicted with the coronavirus and ask you to heal them. And for the citizens that we've lost, please bring comfort to their families. Also, we'd like to pray for the first responders that are treating our citizens, and please keep them safe as they deal with this infectious virus. And also, would like to pray for the cashiers and the people working at the businesses that have been deemed essential. Keep them from harm as they serve our citizens. Also, I'd like to pray for um, the rest of the citizens in the city and keep them from harm, and our city staff, our police, fire, public works, and keep them all safe as they fill the needs of the city. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Council Walter Grove. And I just remind the people out there that even you already heard the governor speak today at 2 p.m. Uh, and I believe he allowed to open 25% of essential business like restaurant and more, but there is no beauty salon or barber shop yet. So our city manager maybe can give you more detail later on. But at this moment, we have no beauty salon or barber shop. I receive a lot of email say Colleyville did that, and I say we are Harlem City. And as you know, myself, our staff, and council member, we are try to comply 100% we can with the governor and the county judge. So anytime you have a problem about the Harlem City order, you can also look at the county judge order. We are almost identical order. Thank you so much. By the way, before we go into the regular session, just ask you, please keep social distancing. That is the most important. We don't want to ticket you. We want to save your life. Okay. I love to see Harlem City, one of the safest city in the nation. If you don't do that, we cannot be the safest city in the nation. Thank you so much. By the way, the next item will be announcement and event. Mr. Camacho, would you please, sir?
Thank you, Mayor. On announcements for April 27, 2020, the COVID-19 virus as preventative measures have caused a lot of massive rate reduction in city activities. So please check the city website for more information regarding changes from Tarrant County and from the city. Secondly, if you have not completed your 2020 census paperwork, please make an effort to do so because the data collected concerning ethnic backgrounds, age, gender, and financial status will assist the government in funding in different regions of the country. The deadline has been moved from the end of July to mid-August because of the coronavirus restrictions. And then please be advised that the Northern Cross Boulevard from Anderson Boulevard west to the Northern Cross Apartments entrance will be closed beginning today, April 27th, for much needed street repairs. And they expect the road to be reopened on Monday, May the 4th. But this work is all weather dependent. And that's all we have on the announcements.
Thank you, sir. And next item will be a monthly financial report. And Ms. Fox, are you
Thank
the
you, Mayor.
one? Yes.
Yes, sir. And I'll have Laura get that presentation here.
Yeah. You got Laura?
And the next page is fine, Laura. Thank you. So to just remind everyone, March is 50% through our budget year. And so these numbers that we're presenting, as you look through the totals and where we should be both on the revenue and expense side, again, that's 50% through our budget year as we go through these numbers. So our beginning fund balance in the general fund was at 66.5 million. We're currently, as of the end of March, at 78 million. So we've spent about 40% of our expenses, and we brought in about 62% on the revenue side. And looking at just the general fund, we had a beginning fund balance of $9.8 million. And at the end of March, we're at 16.6 million. We have spent about 45% of the expenditures, and we're at 71% collections on the revenue side. Our property tax revenue, we brought in about 99%. As all of you are familiar, we bring the majority of the property tax in the months of December, January. That's when the largest majority of those come in. So we are in good shape when it comes to property tax. And looking at sales tax, we've brought in currently, we're right on budget or right at budget on the sales tax side. If you could go to the next slide, Laura. I want to go through the 3-year comparison. While we were down slightly in the month of March, I just want to also remind you that these numbers you see for March are actually January sales tax collections. So we always fall 2 months behind when we receive the numbers from the comptroller's office. So when you see March numbers, that's sales tax collections for January. So although we were down in March, we have already seen April's numbers, and we're only slightly down in April. You can go to the next slide, please. This shows a decrease of 12.4%, but for the month of April, which would be February sales tax, we were down less than 1%, so that did come up slightly. And that's all I have on the monthly financial report.
And why don't you go ahead and do a quarterly investment report too, right?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. The next slide, please. Looking at our quarterly investments, I want to go through some of the numbers on this. So we're reporting, the last time we did a presentation for you guys was in would have been presenting the December numbers. We did go from our ending book value of 71 million to 75 million at the end of March. All the numbers still look good. Where you see a decrease in unrealized gains and losses, that is loss in value due to interest rates going down. I do want to remind everyone that we do not invest in the stock market. We only invest in municipal securities, federal securities, CDs, and government investment bonds. You'll see another considerable drop in looking at the 6-month treasury value at 1.62, the change to 0.15, and I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. So our overall value, though, is 75. And looking at our portfolio, and this is pretty important because this gives you an idea of where we have our funds invested. About half of our investments, which 46% is in our investment pools, we're seeing the most interest rate in our investment pools at this point in time. And so we watch this daily. We move money around as necessary from either the bank account to investment pools because we have that liquidity in those areas that allow us to do that. About 30% is in agencies, 12% in our municipal securities, and 12% in CDs. This gives you an idea of the liquidity. So we have our largest amount in the 1 to 30 days And then in some of those securities, as you go across that chart, go up to 2 to 3 years. Good news is we have a large amount of our money that is liquid. In the 2 to 3 year, we just let all of that set and hopefully see a turn in some of the values of those interest rates long term. And looking at the US Treasury yields, just to give you an idea of how this has changed, and we're kind of see these charts very similar to this as we look at our next quarter, of course. But to give you an idea, we were at 1.62 just in the month of December. And as of February 28th, that dropped all the way down less than 1%. And there was even 2 days that we saw 1 to 3 month investments down to 0% yields. So again, this is something that we watch closely, and we have not, since the turn of the economy, we have not purchased many of these because of the low interest, unless we had some that matured. Okay. And looking at the GDP, or the gross domestic product, this is interesting because the GDP measures or attempts to kind of pinpoint the country's economic health in just one number. To give you an idea, as the fourth quarter of 2019, which is the last numbers reported to us, we were up 2.1%. I think, we'll definitely see a change in this chart as we look at this for our next quarterly update, but this kind of encompasses the value of goods and services and tries to attempt the health, to show the health of our overall economy. And if you go to the last slide, this is another one that looks at the consumer confidence index. At the time, it kind of measures out where they believe will be, and it compares it to the gross domestic product. And at the time, it's kind of yielding up from our last recession back in 2009 timeframe. And you see how that slowly goes up, and there's some dips. And again, this may be a chart that we see drastically change as we look at the next chart for the next quarter. Normally, we get our unemployment rates quarterly, and the last unemployment rates have been reported through September of 2019. That is the most recent data that's provided for us at this point in time. And I believe a lot of that has to do with the large influx of work that that department is having to do at this point in time. So hopefully we'll have an update on those numbers when we do our next quarterly report. And hopefully they can get us close to what that looks like nationally and locally. And I'd be glad to take any questions you might have regarding our investment report.
Council, you have any question for Ms. Faust? Well, looks like you've done a good job. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
Walter Grove.
Hey, I
I'm
have a question.
Can you, hang on. Laura, can you turn off the screen here? It's locked. That's why I didn't see Ms. Grove.
Okay. On the sales tax, how bad do you think it's going to be since everything's been shut down for a month?
So we are analyzing those, Walter. We get the report from the comptroller's office on the 8th of each month. So when we get May 8th numbers, unfortunately, that's only going to give us a 2-week true picture of what happened since everything began to shut down about mid-March. So on June 8th, we'll have a more true picture of what that looks like overall, because we'll get a full month's sales tax numbers. What I've done is I've actually taken all of our businesses, gone through, highlight the businesses that we know may not be operable. I think our city's in a very fortunate position. While we rely on sales tax, we don't rely as heavily as some of our neighbors do. And some of the retail big boxes the largest majority of our sales tax come from construction division. And fortunately, that's one area that's continued to, maintain work and be essential. So I don't believe we'll suffer as great as some of our neighbors might. We certainly will see an impact, and we're monitoring those. The company that we use to analyze our sales tax is 1 month even behind the comptrollers, because by the time they get the comptrollers, they're even, just 30 days more behind. But we do take all the analysis tools that they provide us, which are, we're very fortunate to have, thanks to you guys. So we're using those right now to just monitor individual to see what type of impact. For the budget next year, or even for the budget this year, we have taken our numbers for projected year end down by 25%. We hope that it's not that bad, but I think it's when we start looking at, get a little bit more data each month, we'll get a little closer. But that's what we're kind of looking at right now as far as gauging our year end numbers.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, sir. And any more questions? I've seen none. So I go ahead and move to the consent agenda. We have 3 items here. One, go ahead, Mr. Thompson.
Yes, before, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Before we get into the consent agenda, I do have one question for Mr. Wayne Olson. I have been asked by the committee, or a member of our committee on the Ethics Commission, about including the alternates, maybe some wording to have them included at the meetings. I know I asked you about that, and you just said that would be something in orientation, but is there anything that we could do to add that to the ordinance?
Talk to me about that a little bit, Lynn. What is it specifically that you want to have the alternates do?
We want to make sure that they understand that they're responsible to come to the meetings, whether they're part of the voting. That's not it. We want to make sure, because of timelines, that if they get in on a case and say one of the voting members is not able to attend, they're already there for the meetings and understand what's transpired, and they could just step in and vote on whatever at that time.
Sure. Yeah, there's 2 ways to handle that. We could certainly put it in the ordinance. We're on second reading tonight, but we can add language to the ordinance that specifically addresses that. It sounds to me like what you want to do is require that all alternate members attend every meeting that they're capable of attending, and that they be prepared to participate in the meeting in the event that one of the regular members is not available to participate. We could add that to the ordinance. Typically, that would be something that the chairman would entertain at every meeting. The chairman would be required to do a head count, take roll call, determine whether or not we have a full quorum of the Ethics Commission. And if so, then those members who are regular members would participate and vote on everything. And then in the event that we have one or more members absent, that's when the chairman would make the determination of which of the alternates is going to participate, and that announcement would be made at the beginning of either that particular agenda item or the entire meeting, if that applies to the entire meeting. So I guess I'll defer to the council. If we want to try to craft some language right now to put into the ordinance, that's legally permissible. But otherwise, that's something that can be taken care of procedurally, or we can come back and amend the ordinance at a future date.
Could Suzanne speak on what her feelings are since she was chairman of that committee?
I'm certainly fine with that, Mayor. Or do you want to hear from Suzanne on that?
We were just discussing this, that we wouldn't know if, until we were at a meeting, if we might have to recluse ourselves from that meeting because of who it might pertain to or what it might pertain to. And so that was our reasoning, that if all alternates were at the meetings, then at any time they could just step in and we wouldn't lose our timeline that we are being held to keep our meetings going and our findings. So that was our reasoning for making sure that that was required of the alternates. And did we need to put that in there or just do it at the time of we do the training? But I just want to make sure that the alternates know that they need to be there.
Right. It is a very good point. We have confusion from time to time about the role of alternates, and I understand that there are probably some boards and commissions where alternates don't participate on a regular basis, and that may be a little disconcerting for them. But the reality is it's important for alternates to be at all meetings, to know what's going on, to know the history of the issues that are before the committee or commission that they're sitting on. And the issues that are raised by Ms. Norris are very legitimate. I think it definitely needs to be covered in the training session, and I think the chairman needs to emphasize and enforce that all alternates need to be at every meeting. And absolutely, if there's an issue that comes up at the meeting for the first time where one of the regular members has a conflict, then it's very appropriate for that member to announce their conflict and recuse themselves from participating. And then the chairman should designate one of the alternates to participate in that particular matter at that point.
Yeah.
Something like this. I'm sorry, go ahead, Ms. Norris. You first.
I was just gonna say that we all understand those rules, but further down the line, somebody else might be taking over and they might not, that's why I wanted it in the ordinance, is what I thought was best. That
Yeah,
if it was in the ordinance.
That's why I want to ask Wayne, if we go ahead. Wayne, what do you think about we table this one until next time? Make sure we have all the language in there. Right, Ms. Thompson, you think that's maybe the best one?
If that's agreeable legally, I don't have a problem with that. That's,
I think we have a couple of options here. One, it would be to table it and let's add the language. Let me submit it to the council so that you're aware of the additional language before second reading at the next meeting. And we certainly can do that. Alternatively, we could add to the ordinance that the Ethics Commission shall adopt rules of procedure. And we can put it in their rules of procedure that has the requirement for the alternates participating at the meetings, if you want to continue with adopting the ordinance on second reading tonight.
Well, Council, what do you think? What, Council Waterrow, go ahead, sir. Walter.
I feel that we should just pull it off the consent agenda and table it until the wording, because I feel wordsmithing it while we're at the meeting, trying to get the language right. It's going to have to go to the legal for review anyway, so might as well just table it and send it to legal and have them put that notice in there that alternates have to attend the ethics board meetings.
Thank you. Council Ricky Brown, go ahead, sir. Ricky.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Strong. Thank you, Mayor. A couple of things, since we're going to table it anyway, but I do have, after really going over this, and I'm sorry that I took this long to really go over it with a fine tooth comb, but some of the farm, section 2-456, item B, do we have this farm yet that a person feels that there's a violation? it says on a farm provided by the city. Do we have that farm yet in place?
Mr. City Secretary, you're the best to answer that probably.
No, Ricky, we don't have it complete. We have a draft, but not a one that's been situated completely. I don't have one yet.
Okay, do you think we could have that before we vote on this or to pass it along?
Yes, sir,
And-
we'll be able to have that after the final, ready to go with the final reading.
Okay, and then, one other thing that keeps on coming up in here, let me find it. Okay, when a first person files a complaint, it must be supported by firsthand knowledge of the alleged violation, or supported documentation. What is firsthand knowledge? They can file a complaint just by coming in and say, I have knowledge of this, and fill out no documentation. If someone can explain that to me.
Okay, the form that we have, it's going to be, there are, where they sign, and they will have either a document, I would just say if it was, a document where this person has been shown that they've caused an infraction. There's going to be several specifics, but that would be produced. They would show that they're in possession of this. They would also sign that they, if there was information given to them from a citizen or from somebody, that they would list that person's name. So that person would be part of this infraction being listed. So there are several different things that it's just not going to be someone coming in here and just spouting hearsay. But
Okay,
it's going to be backed up with either documentation or the person who had told them that information will be given.
okay, so do we even need the term firsthand knowledge, or it's just strictly on, it has to be documented before it can be followed through? This firsthand knowledge is kind of scary to me, that they'll just come into your office and say, hey, I have firsthand knowledge, and not fill out any paperwork or documentation. The firsthand knowledge wording scares me.
Okay, if for example, if someone was to witness an elected official doing something illegal and watched it right there happen, then they could come in and tell, saying that I witnessed this and I'm willing to sign a document to that effect.
Okay, but they would have to sign a document.
Yes, there's going to be, yes, this is not going to be, we have a person who's reported that that'll all be documented out. It has to, we want to, keep this transparent on both sides on everything.
Okay. Okay, well, we're tabling it anyway, I hope. So if any other questions here, I'll pursue further later.
Okay.
Let us say this. We have maybe 3 weeks before the next meeting, and I would like also spend a little time to looking at this over, make sure anything need to correct, so we can contact with Wayne. We try to revise the complete, not 100% good ordinance, but at least we have this ordinance passed, because since that time until now, it's take too long, and we have 3 weeks. But Ms. Brown, your point is good. Everybody have a good point here. Wayne, you're gonna have to take that information to see if you can come up with the draft ordinance complete and send for each council, let them view them to see any correction need to make before we go to the next meeting. Council Thompson, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor, if it's acceptable at this time, I'd like to make a motion to table the ethics ordinance that's currently on the consent agenda to the appropriate meeting coming forward.
Okay, thank you. And Council Gavanze, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, Mayor, that's for a second for that.
Okay, and thank you. We already have second. Go ahead, show your vote, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, Yeah, this item
My
number.
screen is frozen, so I'm holding up the yes, but my screen
Okay.
is frozen.
Item number 4, unanimous approval. We table this until next meeting. By the way, we come back on the minutes. This item number 3 ready for motion. If you don't have any question or any correction, go ahead, Council Walter.
For the other items of the consent agenda, I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda minus item number 4, the Ethics Commission ordinance, which we just tabled.
Okay, let Council, do you want any discussion, any question on item number 5 or no? Because Council Watercrow want to make number 3, number 4 in motion right now.
Lynn Thompson is holding a discussion.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I was going to say, I was going to second the motion unless someone else has
Okay.
need for discussion.
Okay, I see none. So this item already got second. Go ahead, Council Watercrow. Go ahead, sir. Walter? Yes, sir. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4.
My screen's messed up, so I don't know if you can see me or not.
Okay,
And
you say yes,
I
that's
have a
good.
yes. Yes.
Okay, we got number 3, number 5 unanimous approved. Thank you so much. And now we go to regular agenda. Ms. Tony on social media policy. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. Laura, you going to put up our presentation, please? Okay, so tonight we have the long-awaited social media policy that we provided to you for review. Now, this is one of the policies that when we send those out, they have to go to the employees because of the charter. It gives the employees an opportunity to send back their comments. And we did get some feedback on a couple of employees regarding primarily clarification of information. Okay, next slide. So the social media is a communication platform and it covers all types of medium. So it's Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all kinds of things, even those things that aren't in existence now. We tried to write it so that the policy wouldn't be dated as soon as the latest hot social media came out, and it would be a timely policy. Now, social media can be very beneficial for business use if it's an effective and efficient communication of things that we need to get out to citizens quickly. And employees enjoy using social media to stay in contact and communicate with friends, family, and relatives, and to comment on things that they may be interested in. So the policy contains a list of expectations for the employees to use. And one of the things that we had to be very careful of when we wrote this policy was compliance with laws, because employees have a fundamental right to freedom of speech under the First Amendment. So we had to be very careful in everything that we wrote, so that when Wayne and his office reviewed this policy, they took all of that into consideration to make sure that we weren't trying to violate any of our employees' freedom of speech. It also is written in mind of complying with the harassment policy as well as the records retention policy and things like that. It does cover all employees. So it would be full-time, part-time, even ones that don't have email accounts like school crossing guards, because anything that they post could have an impact on the city. Now, we didn't do an outright ban to employees making posts while they're on duty. And that's because we felt like that if something was blowing up in an employee's personal life and they were getting texts and comments and calls and different things about it, it might be in the city's best interest if they took the time and posted something on social media about it so that they could then focus on their job. So we have a limitation that should generally be limited to no more than 10 minutes per day. Laura, can you go back to slide 3? Okay, so the expectations for personal use of social media is that an employee is not allowed to represent themselves as a spokesperson for the city. Of course, if there is someone that's a subject matter expert, they can comment in, but sometimes employees just want to make comments about things. But if they're not the person that's responsible for it, they won't be able to, they'll have to make sure that they say that it's their personal opinion and things to that effect. But one example, actually we've seen it several times, is David Cummings, the Assistant Director of Public Works. He was commenting and still does, in fact, in a lot of really good situations, because when things are posted on Facebook and there are questions or concerns about something that's happening related to water or to most recently a street cut, he is a subject matter expert. And so sometimes it allays the fears and concerns and kind of ends all the speculation when he's able to comment on it. So that same thing would be in effect for employees who really were the subject matter expert on the policy issue. Now, when an employee has a personal account where they have been identified as a City of Haltom City employee, they have to be very careful, because we don't want employees posting anything or saying anything on any of their social media that could cause them to lose their credibility, because we don't want them to damage the public's trust in them as an employee, because then it would make them much more difficult to continue in their employment. And so they can't, they have to be careful in what they post. We also have a prohibition that they can't release anything that's confidential or sensitive information. So if somebody knew an investigation was going on, or they knew something that was going on but it wasn't public information, they can't disclose that information. Laura, I don't think we're on the same page. There you go. On the use of city logos, work-related photos, recordings, and uniforms. Now, we didn't outright ban this because there are a lot of situations where employees in Haltom City are caught doing good. And so we put the requirement that the employee had to have the express permission from their department director before they are using the city's logo, like their equipment. One example of this would be a picture that I saw on Facebook that had one of the crews from the fire department, and they had stopped at a lemonade stand to buy some lemonade from a child that had a lemonade stand. So those types of positive feel-good stories, we don't really have an issue with any of that. But if an employee were to take that use and turn it into something that brought discredit to the city or to the employee as an employee, that would not be allowed. Now, there are some social media use that could result in disciplinary action, and that would be any kind of posting that's harassing, bullying, or demeaning coworkers. Under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, employee behavior off duty can also impact them on duty. And so they can't go out and blast another employee because of any reason, or harass them because their opinions might be different or for whatever reason. Now, one area where we did get some feedback from employees is on postings by others related to an employee. So if an employee posts something or gets tagged in a picture, they don't, if they're tagged and somebody else makes a comment, they don't really have any control over that comment. So the feedback that I got from my media gurus was that the employee would need to report that to the appropriate media outlet, and then also probably contact their supervisor. Okay, next slide, Laura. Now, there are a number of people in different accounts, different departments within the city that manage some of the official Haltom City accounts. So they have guidelines that just tell them they have to apply with the applicable laws, regulations, and the departmental standards. And then we also have addressed the issue of social media use for people that are non-exempt and should be paid overtime if they work more than 40 hours. And so that's in the policy, because we want to make sure that we're not paying them accurately, so that we're compensating them correctly. Okay, next slide. Okay, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Ms. Beckett, how does this apply, or is council even involved with this?
No, this policy is, because it's going to be in the policies and procedures manual, it applies only to city employees. There is a separate policy that will be coming in the very near future that will apply to boards and commissions.
Okay, and as far as this goes, were there any responses from employees besides just clarification? Were there in regards to this?
Oh, there were some comments, but the comments were pretty specific. And after I actually met with both of the people, there were two people that provided input, and they were not in like IT. And so I met with them because, to be honest, I wasn't completely sure what they were saying in their comments back to me. So we met and we clarified. I rewrote some things to include their concerns.
Okay, and they're square with this now, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
they were.
Thank you.
Councilor Ricky Brown. Ricky, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Beckett, thank you very much. So there will be, along with Ms. Thompson, there will be another one. This is mainly just for employees, correct?
That's correct. It is strictly for employees, because in our policy and procedure manual, that's in personnel policies and procedures that just pertain to the employees.
Okay, so there's no sense of under this one here prohibits harassment, bullying, or demeaning coworkers or otherwise creating a hostile work environment. So, I mean, since we have another one coming out, then, I mean, I'd like for it to include board appointees, volunteers, council members, that there will be no harassment or bullying of council members. And so, but that's a whole different policy, correct?
That would apply to other board and commission members and council members, yes. Now, as it relates to employees, employees do have a duty. Employees should avoid posting subject matter that would likely impair the trust of the public, including public intoxication, illegal drug activity, or other criminal activity, use of profanity, and slandering or defaming public officials, appointees, or other city employees.
Okay, so there would be no, it would not have any weight, and this will be a later resolution, I suppose, but as far as prohibits harassment, bullying, or demeaning of coworkers, there's no, at this time, appointed board members, council members, volunteers, things like that wouldn't be in this particular resolution then, correct?
It is, there are different areas in the policy that talk about employee behavior and their ability to maintain public trust. Now, of course, we have to be very careful because of the employee's First Amendment rights. So it is a very, very slippery slope, and Wayne might be able to provide further guidance if you have some specific questions. I have a suspicion that it may relate to associations or things such as that, and in that arena, we have to be very careful.
Okay, Mr. Olson, I do. Do we need to have in there prohibits harassment, bullying, or demeaning coworkers, volunteers, board members, or council people, council persons?
Well, we do have in there right now language that says employees should avoid the use of profanity and slandering or defaming public officials, appointees, or other city employees. Does that not address what your concern is, council member?
Yes, Mr. Olson, I guess I thought I went through it pretty well, but I will, if I'll take your word that that's there, and look over it again. And then just my personal opinion, as a council member, I would like to just see, I think there's a lot of loopholes in this 10 minutes a day. I would like to see, and I know many companies, if you're on company clock, big companies, you're not allowed to, because you're on their clock. I would like to even see the 10 minutes, because I think we get into lunch periods. Say a public works guy's out repairing a water leak. He might not get to go to lunch. It is 12 to 1 o'clock until they get the water leak fixed. And I just personally, I'd like to see if they're on city clock, no use of social media.
Okay, one issue that we might have with that is the police department and also animal services, because those employees are required to work and they are being paid during their lunchtime. And so a lot of the police officers, the ones in patrol, the night shift, they work 12-hour shifts. And so if they had an emergency at their house, we don't want to prohibit them from trying to contact somebody on social media to help them out or to solve any issues. We just feel like that if we completely prohibit it, the one thing it's going to do is that if employees get some kind of notification, like something's happened with a family member, if they are not allowed to respond in some form or fashion, if they're distracted and they're not able to work, then we're losing the productivity anyway. And so we thought, and this was one of the comments from the employees, we thought that having a minimal amount of time set aside for the employee so that they could stop their work, address it, and then set it aside so they could get back to focusing on their job, that in the end, that would be more productive to them. But we could certainly consider removing that and not allowing any use.
Is cell phone use considered social media?
It depends on how the phone is used. I mean, if they got on Facebook or Instagram and posted something looking for a plumber, say somebody had a water leak in the middle of the night and they were posting looking for a plumber that did after hours work, and they could do that using their cell phone, then yeah, that would be social media.
Okay, well, and let me rephrase that then. As far as getting a hold of them in an emergency, just a good old phone call on their cell phone instead of going on social media, Facebook or whatever. I have no problem having emergency calls on their cell phone. It's when it's all on social media. I think as long as they're on payroll, company, city time, no social media other than cell phone calls, which is one-on-one.
Okay. One of the issues with that for us is that the way that people have smartwatches now and smartphones, it would be almost impossible to police, especially if somebody is using their personal cell phone. And I do think that we have some employees that use their personal cell phone for work as well.
Yes, that's just my personal opinion. And then the very last thing I have, who is the social media account manager?
That is going to be the IT department. So it's either going to be the director of information technology or the web administrator and media technician, and that is David Soriano.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Beckett.
You're welcome.
I'd like to add something if I can. First of all employees, they get a certain amount of personal breaks. They use their personal stuff to assist the city in many ways. So this is a balance that we will find, from a supervision standpoint as well.
Okay. Council Van, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, Tony, thank you so much. This is really good work. I appreciate it. I know in this time it's taken a lot of extra effort, and I appreciate that. So in this, how would it work if someone is on social media, say they had a family event and, let's just say that one of the parents had to take a child to the hospital and the other parent needed to be in on a conference call or something with a doctor, and it involves social media somehow. So they have on their uniform, that's acceptable during that time, even though their badge or their identification would be displayed?
Okay, so we have set it up so that the department directors will have to determine for each of their employees what is going to be acceptable use of the uniform, the logo. A lot of employees have ball caps that have the city's logo on them. I think the fire department has the fire department logo. The police department has the police department logo on it. And so we're putting that back to the supervisors, because if we completely ban it, we miss out on the opportunities to positively impact the citizens and other people with good news stories.
Okay, and, so how would this affect an employee? Does this go in their file? Is it something that can lead to termination?
Well, it depends on what their violation would be. If it's somebody that is harassing another employee or doing something that could impact them from a title standpoint when they're on the job, we would do an investigation, and then that investigation could result in disciplinary action up to and including termination of their employment. It really goes back to how egregious the activity is and things of that nature. Now, if it's just using social media in excess, then that would be something that we typically try to start with not a hammer approach, but more with a prodding. And they would talk to the employee and say, hey, we know you're spending too much time on social media. You need to reduce it significantly or stop it. That's left up to the supervisors and the department directors. Then if it continued on to be an issue, it could become disciplinary.
So council member, to answer your question, Tony did a good job, but yes, this is part of the personnel policy and it is subject to disciplinary action. So depending on the severity of the violation, an employee is subject to disciplinary action if they violate this policy.
Well, it sounds like you've done your due diligence on it with the employees. I just appreciate it, and thank you for your answers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President. Any more council have the question? If you don't, this item number 6 ready for motion. Council Thompson.
Yes, Mayor. Would like to make a motion to approve the resolution R-2020-011-02, the social media policy for city employees as presented.
Thank you, ma'am. And Council Walter Crowe.
That's for a second.
Okay, we got second, and at this time, item number 6 ready for vote. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, item number 6 unanimous approved. Thank you, Council. And we move to number 7, Ms. Batchelor, ordinance number O-2020.012.15. Go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is to amend the zoning ordinance section 35 to increase our alternates from 1 to 3. Historically, this was a problem last year and the beginning of this year where the current alternate has been absent since February of last year. So there were times I did not have a quorum, or I had to get a quorum through Google Duo to get the 6 that's required for a quorum. So this is to increase the pool that we can draw from for our zoning board of adjustments, which is also our assigned board of appeals.
Also, you have any question? I mean, so far we have a problem with the ZBA. That's why we have this ordinance, and I agree 1, 2, 3 would be one of the best. In case 2 could not make it, we still have 1. By the way, go ahead, Council Weeks, go ahead, sir. Over, you say I couldn't see you.
Hey, Luna, I want to make sure that the hearing boards as well. You said sign board.
Yes, zoning board, sign board, and hearings board.
Thank you.
Council Thompson.
Yes, I just wanted to comment. I have been present as an observer at different times when we did not have a quorum. And seeing that this is a quasi-judicial board, I'm wondering if on this, Glenna, if you would also want to have it stated about the alternates attending meetings as well. I'm just asking.
That would be a question for Wayne, if that's an option, like with the ethics committee that y'all talked about previously.
It certainly is. It's permissible to do that if that's what the council's preference is.
Well, just speaking from an observation and the times that we've affected businesses as well as citizens, I would say that that would be a consideration that we would want to think about strongly. But you guys can voice your own opinions on that.
Council Van Zandt, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Ms. Thompson. I think that it's a courtesy to those who want to do business here, our citizens and outside companies, that we have the proper people in place. And I would personally appreciate it being included.
Any more questions from?
I will make a comment, Mayor, on
Go ahead,
this.
sir.
Yeah, what we have in the draft ordinance right now is the provision, item number 6, that says in the event a regular member is absent from or has a conflict of interest during a meeting of the board, the chairman shall select an alternate to sit in the regular member's absence. This is on first reading tonight, and I'm not trying to rush the council into anything, but we can amend that to require that alternates attend all the meetings of the board. In addition to this, that the chairman chooses an alternate to sit in the place of a regular member who's absent. If you want to adopt this on first reading tonight, you can prepare that language and have it to you before second reading, if that's acceptable to you. Otherwise, if you want me to change it, we can table this till the next meeting and just start from scratch there.
Council Van Zandt, go ahead, ma'am.
With that understanding that it can be added, I would go ahead and make a motion that we approve these ordinances. Ordinance number 02020-012-15 and 0-2002-032-15, section 35.
Thompson.
One question before I second that. And Gay Van Zandt, were you indicating that that would be with the modification included in that motion?
Yes, I said based on Mr. Olson's suggestion, yes.
Okay. That would be for a second, Mayor.
Okay, we got a second, but before you vote, let I mention about this. Since ZBA is still using our chamber, they need to dress business casual, or maybe the city with logo, whatever. When you interview the candidate, tell them that. And, you know, because in the past, we already have somebody have t-shirt and a short and something like that. It won't happen. You know, we need to respect the public. And it doesn't matter, you do service for nothing, but you have to respect the public. And okay, at this time, Council Branguish, you have any question before we make a motion? I mean, vote?
I do. I didn't hear first reading on that motion.
Yeah, we got the first reading from Council Van Zandt. You want to repeat that or what?
I just wanted to make sure that was for first reading because we didn't have that on the motion.
Okay, for first reading, yes.
Yes, that's for a first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Weed. This one, item number 7, ready for a vote.
Mayor, before you vote, let's take a note that regarding the public hearing, we did not receive any emails regarding this. So just to say legally that any citizen could have asked questions about this in the right of a public hearing, so there was no emails received.
Okay, thank you. And Council Watercrow. Okay, go ahead. Van Zandt, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, item number 7, unanimous approved for the first reading. And thank you so much. We move to number 8. City Manager, for this as the continuation of functions. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. At the advice of our legal counsel, we have a resolution tonight that just provides a plan for continuity of functions in the event of a disaster, like what we're going through now. You know, we've learned from this situation, and that, we must be prepared to operate in the event. We experience even something that's more dire than what we're going through now. But the purpose of the plan is just to provide for that continuity of municipal functions in the event of a disaster when expedited action is required, or the city council is unable to meet in a timely manner, so that the city continues to go forward. And in your packets is that resolution. It just talks about giving the city manager the authority to make certain procurements that's within that fiscal budget of that year. It deals with the contracts that need to be signed to move the city forward during a crisis. Also, personnel policy, which we talked about in recent times, and the city manager may approve amendments to the personnel policy to ensure efficient operations during disasters. It talks about plating approvals, things of that nature, transfer of funds in the current fiscal year budget from department to department if necessary to sustain operations during a disaster, to waive late fees and establish payment plans for utility customers if needed, to discontinue shut off of water and other utilities for non-payment. It talks about the delay in enforcement of code violations in the event of hardship, and pretty much all those kinds of things that need to be done if we were just to have a situation where we couldn't meet. Since this came on the advice of our proactive advice of our city attorney, and we appreciate that, he may want to make some comments about this as well.
Mayor and council, I will comment on this. We've been quite fortunate that we haven't encountered a lot of these situations where the city manager has had to make these decisions right now. But one thing that's important to note, this is something that the statute that allows for the declaration of local disaster specifically authorizes, and it contemplates there's a need for this. And if it comes up in a situation where the council's not able to make these decisions, I highly recommend that you delegate this responsibility to the city manager in those rare circumstances. What we have to remember is, as serious as the situation is right now, we are dealing with a statewide pandemic, a statewide emergency, and the governor has suspended a lot of the rules that normally apply to the city council. And what we're doing right now and being able to meet, we're allowed to do because the governor has suspended the application of a lot of the provisions of the Open Meetings Act and other statutes that apply to us. If for whatever reason, though, Haltom City were to encounter just a local disaster, a tornado or something along those lines, and the governor did not take the same action that applied statewide, and we would be subject to the regimented requirements of the Open Meetings Act and other situations, it might be difficult for the city council to be able to meet and be able to make these decisions on a timely basis. And so for that situation, it's important for us to be prepared for that. So we can talk about any of the items in this resolution if you're uncomfortable with them, but as a whole, I think this is a good idea to allow the city manager to exercise these authorities in the event the council is not able to meet and make the decisions on its own.
Council, you have any question, comment, suggestion? Council Thompson, go ahead.
Yes, well, personally, I think that, an ounce of prevention is worth all the money in the world and worth all the unnecessary heartache. Mr. Olson, in other cities, is this something other cities are readily adopting, something very similar that you're aware of?
Yes, they are. Several of the cities that we represent as city attorney have asked for a similar type of resolution, and they've been adopting these.
Well, good. And thank you so much for looking after us and pointing us in the right direction. We appreciate it.
You're absolutely welcome.
Any more comment? Okay, I see none. So item number 8, ready for a motion. Council Thompson?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. I would like to make a motion that we accept resolution number 2020-016-01, disaster continuation of functions.
Thank you, ma'am, and Council Vincent.
Yes, Mayor, that's for a second. Thank you.
Okay, any more question or comment? If not, go ahead, register your vote, please. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, item number 8, unanimous approved, thank you. And now we have number 9, Mr. Camacho, about reschedule and cancel the regular meeting. Go ahead.
Yes, Mayor, thank you. We have to, if we're gonna cancel a meeting, cancel a council meeting, we have to take this beforehand. And of course, the second meeting in May 25th, is gonna be Memorial Day weekend. And you see in your notes, that's usually, council has usually scheduled that and at times moved it either a week ahead or just canceled the second meeting. And one thing that we have different this year, of course, is because their May election has been moved to November. We're not having to deal with swearings or any new council additions, so we'll be having the same council situated as that. So we have, if you have a calendar available, if you can look at one, May 11th is our next scheduled meeting, 2 weeks from now. And we're getting y'all notice that there was a strategic planning for May the 18th, but I'm gonna let City Manager Rex Phelps give you an update on that. Go ahead, Rex.
Thank you, Art. As we were talking about this item, and I'd also discussed it with Wayne, I'm going to ask the council to consider moving that special May 18th strategic meeting or planning meeting to June the 15th. And the reason for that is, as Sadana had talked about earlier in the finance report, you know, we're a little bit at a disadvantage. We need a little more time to know exactly the effect is, you know, from the sales tax revenues. And I just think it would be, we could give you more information. Normally, we've done this meeting that I'm talking about in June anyway, but we were, before COVID, we were going to try to do this meeting in May, but I think it's best that we move the May 18th special meeting strategic goals to June 15th. Now, if the council wants to stick with May 18th, we'll certainly take that 2-week window we'll get, and we'll try to do our best to make some projections. But you know, that's the only thing. Since he had that on here for the second meeting in May, the normal second meeting, I thought I would get your opinion on the strategic meeting.
Thank you, sir. And Council Ricky Brown.
Thank you again, Mayor. This is not so much the special meeting, but to Mrs. Batchelor. Glenda, is there anything that you see? I mean, I wouldn't want to hold up any platting or developing or anything like that. Do you see any problems doing away with the meeting?
No, sir, we haven't had a P&Z meeting, so we're fine in that regard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Didn't want to hold up progress.
Thank you, Council Brown. And any more question or comment, Council Thompson? Go ahead, ma'am.
I think it's a great idea to wait as long as we can for the budget meeting to give us a chance to see where the sales tax, how it is really affecting us. I feel like that would be in our better judgment. So, and I have no problem with the meeting, the May 25th meeting being eliminated as long as there's no effects as far as planning and zoning or ZBA meeting that would come into play.
Okay, any more comment? Any question? I see none, so item number 9 ready for a motion. Council Weiss, go ahead, sir.
Item number 9, I make a motion, we cancel the May 25th, 2020 meeting.
And, okay, thank you. And Council Susan Saul, go ahead, ma'am.
Thank you, Mayor. That's for a second.
We got the second, and go ahead, register your vote, please. Okay, item number 9, unanimous approved. Thank you so much, sir, ma'am. And number 10, continuation of participation in Tarrant County Consortium of Non-Entitlement CD for the CDBG program that represent to the Community Development Block Grant Program. Go ahead, Ms. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. So the item before you, I'm asking you to pass a resolution. The resolution is for Haltom City to continue to stay in the Tarrant County Consortium of cities, of non-entitlement cities, so that we can receive specifically Community Development Block Grant funds. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development has various programs which provide grants, loans, et cetera, to entities to help various segments of the population in the U.S. Most of these programs are designed to benefit low to moderate income areas. As you know, that for years, for at least the last 30 years, Haltom City has received CDBG funds. Most recently, we reconstructed a street, Oakwood Street, between Walthall and 28th Street. 3 years ago, we could replace the water main or upsize the water main in Mini Street from a 2-inch to a 6-inch. Last year's program was also a water main project, Oak Knoll Drive, and we also replaced the 2-inch water main with, in that case, an 8-inch. And this year's project, which you've seen just a few months ago, is again water mains in the area between Waldemar and Belknap, just immediately west of Haltom Road. To receive these funds, the U.S. HUD department classifies cities into 2 groups. If you're a city with a population in excess of 50,000, you're an entitlement city, and you can receive these funds directly. If you're a city less than 50,000, which obviously we are, and quite a few cities in Tarrant County are, you have to be a member of a consortium. In the past, Tarrant County has been the lead in the consortium. Almost all cities except for Arlington and Fort Worth are in this consortium. Interestingly enough, North Richland Hills, a city that's in excess of 50,000 population, they've chose to be in this consortium because when you're in the consortium, Tarrant County handles all the paperwork and the administrative functions that are required as part of the CDBG program. So it takes a lot of the headache off of the cities. So the resolution before you commits Haltom City to the next 3 years being in this consortium so that we can continue to receive Community Development Block Grant funds. At the end of 3 years, we have an option, or in Tarrant County likewise, that we can decide to get out of the consortium or will automatically remain in it. The city attorney has reviewed the resolution. He has determined that it's legally sufficient, and I would recommend that you pass this resolution. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Greg. And Council, you have any comment, question, or anything? Man, nobody picked on you, Greg. Oh, go ahead, Council Walter Crowe.
I think Councilman Brown beat me to the punch.
Oh. Well,
but
I tell you,
I was going to make a motion to approve the resolution, Romeo-2020-017-01 for the community block grant remaining in the consortium.
Thank you, sir. And Council Ricky Brown.
Thank you, Mayor, and that would be for a second.
I am sorry. I saw you first, but I don't know why I say Walter Crowe.
That's quite all right.
All year long. I don't know. Go ahead, register your vote. Okay, item number 10, unanimous approved. Thank you, Craig. And number 11, Mrs. Pruitt on the standard of care. Go ahead, ma'am. You are so quiet now.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Can y'all hear me? All right. Parks and Recreation Department is presenting this evening the standards of care ordinance O-2020-11-10. This is something we present to you each year in order for us to host our summer camps. Now, of course, in the state we're currently in, we are certainly unsure of what summer camp may look like. However, we still want to follow our procedures and dot our I's and cross our T's and get our standards of care approved so that we can make sure that we get that exemption with the state. If you do recall, municipalities are not licensed daycares because we operate on kind of a short-term situation because we offer these summer camps only in the summer for a limited amount of time. So we do get that exemption from the state by providing this standard of care documentation. So essentially we're looking to get that approval once again from City Council so we can get that filed with the state. These standards of care is the same situation that we have used year after year. It talks about the limits of how many kids we have for the providers. Again, with COVID-19 situation, we will certainly have a very different situation this summer if we're even able to hold summer camp. We will follow, we have a very different protocol already in mind, but legal has already reviewed our standards of care and approved those and looked over the ordinance. So you do have those in front of you, and I am available for any questions.
Councilor Thompson.
Yes, just to reiterate, this covers the whole city, whether it's the junior fire and police camp or any activities at the library. Should they have something, it's not just the Parks and Rec, correct?
It is listed as Parks and Recreation, but I believe with the library programs, they're not, the hours are not where they would need to have this kind of exemption. Same with the police and fire camp, because it's only a 1 week situation. We do multiple weeks, so it's a necessity.
Okay, thank you.
So Walter Grove.
Councilwoman Thompson already covered that, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more question for Christie? I see none. So this action item, go ahead, ready for motion.
Mayor, may I also interject that as this is a public hearing, I received no comments from the public. Thank you.
Okay. We got no public hearing right now, right? Okay. Go ahead. Okay, who first? Councilor Thompson?
I don't know, but I was going to ask that we approve ordinance number O-2020-11-10, establishing the standards of care for our recreation program for the elementary school age children operated by the city. First reading.
Thank you. Who put the discuss first? Councilor Van Zandt? It's hard to.
That's correct.
Go ahead, ma'am.
That's just your second. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We already have the second, and please register your vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This item number 11, unanimous approved. Now, Chief Phillips, ordinance number O-2020.013.01. Go ahead, sir. Chief.
Good evening. Y'all hear me? There you go. I was waiting for her to move her phone. So this is basically a continuation of what we discussed in May when the emergency declarations were first constructed. Is that one of the questions that was asked is what's the enforcement of provisions set out in the emergency plan? At the time, the city had no ordinance to enforce it. We were basically going off the county charge. I'll read you the background to answer some of the questions that we're going to have. So in connection with the disaster declarations and emergency management plan implementation, there's a need to update several of the city provisions. Chapter 26 of the City Code provides for adoption of the Emergency Management Plan and related rules and regulations. The current penalty provisions in this chapter sets forth a fine of $100 to $200. Chapter 418 of the Government Code adopts the Texas Disaster Act, which governs the creation of an Emergency Management Plan, an EMP, and the adoption of a declaration of local disaster by the mayor. Section 418.173 provides that the plan may prescribe a punishment for failure to comply, but may not prescribe a fine that exceeds $1,000 or confinement in jail for more than 180 days. This is the maximum penalty the city can adopt for enforcement of the emergency management plan. If the council adopted this maximum penalty, it would amount to a Class B misdemeanor, which is outside the jurisdiction of the Haltom City Municipal Court and could only be prosecuted by the Tarrant County DA's office. This ordinance makes the maximum penalty of a fine $1,000 and no jail time in order for the city's municipal court to retain jurisdiction. There's also language included in Section 2 of the ordinance that allows the city to prosecute this as a Class B misdemeanor if necessary. Also, other provisions in the city code for related violations could be prosecuted as a public health and sanitation violations, which would carry a maximum of fine of $2,000. Staff recommends the city council consider ordinance O-2020-013-01, amending chapter 26 of the emergency management plan to provide penalties for violation of the city's emergency management plan and disaster declarations, the first reading. Got any questions?
Thank you. And Councilor Van Zandt, go ahead, ma'am.
All right, that was one. So if I'm understanding it right, we could keep this within the municipal court?
It would be
with the $1,000 fine?
It would, Haltom City, this plan actually gives officers a second choice to do it. It allows them discretion in the enforcement of this. So it depends on, as you were talking about earlier about the egregious violations, as you can see what's going on in Dallas. Our focus and our mission in the police department is not the enforcement. It's still education and compliance before we take any enforcement action. And we've had no issues with the education or compliance side. But what this does is, and like you talked about earlier, with a tornado comes through where certain cities or the county may not issue an emergency declaration, the city can still issue emergency declaration. And then the adoption of this would allow us an enforcement arm of the city's declaration.
So I guess my second question is, have we had any violators through the COVID situation?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. And would you say that that is a large number?
Depends what your definition of large is.
Just people that aren't obeying the rules.
Oh, yeah, that's, if people obey the rules, I wouldn't have a job. So the deal is the most of them are compliant. And, after a certain amount of time, people get stir crazy. So they are deciding to push the boundaries a little bit. But like I said, once we go out there and speak with them, usually the issues is resolved very quickly.
Okay. If they're underage violators, so is a parent responsible at that point to step in and pay these fines, or how does that work?
So it depends on the age of the child. They're criminally responsible at the age of 10. So anything under 10, it's going to be the parents. 10 to 16 would fall under the juvenile system, and anything 17 above would fall in the adult court system.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Walter, can you hear me? Go ahead.
Thank you. I just had to move the mouse. I guess the question is, how is this constitutionally? Because there are no provisions in the Constitution for extraneous, circumstances like this, where basically we tell people to, remain a certain distance, or they can't go to the parks or go outside, or so. How is this constitutionally?
Oh.
And you're the attorney, so.
I couldn't hear you, Chief, but I'll address that. Well, it's constitutional because the legislature is given the authority to provide laws for the enforcement of these actions. We are actually dealing with the government code right now. This is a statute in Texas that provides for the declaration of local disasters. And again, it provides very specifically for the enforcement of these violations of these types of provisions.
Yeah, but have they been, I guess the question is, have they been tested? Have they been to the Fifth Circuit and ultimately these provisions, these laws, have they been tested?
Walter, I have to assume that they have. I've not personally been involved in local disaster enforcement in the past, but this is something that's been on the books for a number of years now. And of course, we've had local disasters throughout the states on occasion.
Yeah, but this is something that's perpetuated. You know, we're going on a month now, and so it's one of these weird things. You know, because usually disaster is a 2-week event, and it's usually a small geographic area, and this is something that's, you know, statewide, nationwide, and so
it's very interesting because the statute in Texas specifically contemplates this type of event happening. Although typically we're dealing with hurricanes or tornadoes or something along those lines. Yep. The statute specifically envisions the possibility of a pandemic and provides for the declaration to be issued either on a statewide, countywide, or citywide basis, and provides for this penalty of $1,000 fine or up to 6 months in jail. And all we're doing with our ordinance tonight is to take it out of the hands of the district attorney.
Yep.
As the police chief pointed out, we don't even want to write tickets, but
yeah,
if we do have to enforce this, it seems like it's a lot better idea for us to retain control and deal with this in our municipal court.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Councilor Susan Soul, go ahead, ma'am.
Yes, Chief Phillips, what is the most common violation that you are seeing right now? I can't hear you. I can't hear Chief Phillips. Can you guys hear me?
No, I can't hear him.
Can,
I
Cody,
can hear
I can't hear you.
Okay, we've lost the sound of Chief Phillips, but we can hear you.
I can do it.
We're gonna have to do charades here.
Okay, sign language, yeah, okay.
I think people, from what he's doing, is people are getting into conga lines. There you go.
Can I add something here that might help? And Wayne, you can tell me if this is not correct. What this does is allows, if we do have somebody that is in violation, I see what Chief Phillips said, but we do have somebody that's in violation. This gives us the ability to enforce this locally, and maybe it would be through a citation or something like that. But if we don't do this, then it's really no choice. We have to enforce it. It ends up being a Class B misdemeanor, and we don't have a choice. They have to go to jail. We can't handle this in municipal court. So this just gives the officers that ability.
So he put a sign up that said partying. Did you see it?
Yes, he did.
So how?
That was an answer to your question, the most common violation.
Yeah. Okay, but I mean, how is that being reported? Is it, I mean, they're not in the streets partying. They've got to be at somebody's house, right?
And people call.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Chief,
I'm gonna try to wing this a little bit. I got Chief Phillips on a cell phone. I'm gonna see if it'll come through my speaker.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for example, I worked Saturday night because we had 3 individuals get quarantined officer-wise. And coming in, the amount of loud music and party calls that we had, and we go there, and there was large groups of people that were playing all kinds of beer pong, indulging in adult activities that were, definitely in violation. So those are the types, and that's where kind of go back with what Wayne was saying, we're all about the education and compliance. So we're going to do what we can to make sure that we keep that. We're not going to do like other cities have been accused of doing, stopping vehicles and asking to get papers or anything. We were never involved, and we have no desire to be involved in that type of activity.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more question? If not, this item ready for a motion? Number 12.
Mayor, may I interject that there was a public hearing and we did not receive any comments? Just want to get that on the record.
Thank you. Councilor Watergrove.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve ordinance Oscar-2020-013-01, amending chapter 26, emergency management for penalties for violations, first reading.
Yeah, okay, thank you. And Councilor Vincent? Maybe.
Thank you, Mayor. That is for second.
We got a second, please register your vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, item number 12, unanimous approved. Now, 13, city staff report. Ms. Farrell, do you have anything, sir? Donna? No, thank you. And we go to number 4, future agenda item. So you have anything want to put on next meeting? None. Okay, more resignation of more commission on committee members. Anybody resign? No. How about reappoint? I see none. So we have no executive session, and before June, I'll thank you so much for a meeting like this. It's hard, but we are improving. Before leaving, I'll say thank you to all council members, city manager, and your staff, and especially thank you IT for set up this. And good night, everyone, and see you next meeting. Thank you. The meeting adjourned at 7:32 p.m. Thank you. Be safe.
Bye, y'all.